So we're here on the west coast of Australia at a place called Shark Bay, particularly a location called Carbala Beach, Shark Bay, Western Australia. And you might ask why, if our interest is searching for habitable worlds, why are we here on this beach? I mean, it's a nice beach to be on, obviously, but that's not the reason we're here. We're here because this is a really interesting location to think about looking for evidence of life and how we might go about looking for that evidence on other planets. So let's talk a little bit about how we make that connection. So if we're standing on this beach, you might ask, what would we look for on this beach to look for evidence of life on this planet here? And today, if you were looking around, there's abundant evidence of life. I mean, there's me standing here. There's other people here. We're here with a scientific team. There's other vehicles here that in the background. So obviously there's human life here, advanced human life. But advanced human life has only existed on the Earth for a very short amount of time, a couple thousand years. And for most of that time, we weren't driving cars and using video cameras. And humans altogether have only existed on the Earth in their modern form for a couple of 100,000 years. So what else might we look at on this beach? Well, off in the background, there are trees and bushes of various sorts. There's various sorts of plant life. That's obviously life. And so if you came down here to this beach thousands of years ago, or millions of years ago, you would have seen those kind of plants, and you would have said, aha, okay, this is an inhabited world. And that's great. But plants have only existed on the surface of the Earth, living above the water, for a few 100 million years. And the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. We think that there's been life on the Earth for about 3.5 billion years. But for only the last few 100 million years, for only a small fraction of that 4.5 billion year span of Earth history, has there been life at the Earth's surface of the sort that you might think of when you think about trees and bushes and grasses and things like that. So what else might we look at for evidence of life? If we were on a planet that was at a more primitive stage of its evolution than the Earth was even a few 100 million years ago, what might we look for? Well, we might look at the beach sand here itself. This is a kind of peculiar beach in that it's not made up of sand. I said beach sand, but really it's not made up of sand. It's made up of countless tiny shells, tiny little clam-like shells, little bivalves. The entire beach here is made of these things. And if you saw these on another planet, if we went to Mars, for example, and sent a rover on the surface of Mars and came up to some dried up seashore. There are no oceans on Mars today, but there are features that we think might be the shores of ancient seas on Mars. And we found a deposit that looked like this, that had stuff that looked like this, fossilized. We'd say, wow, there were clams on Mars, and we'd get quite excited. We'd probably argue quite a lot about what that meant, but we'd get quite excited about that as a sign of life. The thing about that, though, is that, again, these sort of structures made by biology have not existed on the Earth all that long. They've existed on the Earth, some variant of this sort of thing you can find in the fossil record back about 500 million years ago. 500 million years, that's about 500 million years. So about 500 million years out of the 4.5 billion year history of the Earth, for only about 500 million years have you had fossils of this sort possible to be preserved on the Earth, as far as we're aware. So, and the Earth, again, has been inhabited for at least 3.5 billion years. So for most of the period of time that the Earth had life, shells like this were not being formed by biology. They didn't exist.